Welcome back to the Bowtie Goat YouTube channel, where if you try hard enough, you can be the next DECA goat. Today, we're going to do something that has been done nowhere online before. We're going to do a role play breakdown. We're going to take a very popular role play video, which you can find lots of online, but mine is one of the best. And we're going to break that down, given the role play tips that I provided for you, and see what can be done to this already great role play to make it even better. Stay tuned and let's dig in. If you've never seen my roleplay tips document online, I will link it down below, but the first page is general tips that I've gotten from students as they've gone through roleplays in the past couple of years. The second page is a kind of guideline for how to get through a roleplay in about a 10-minute piece, and what you'll see is my student does this pretty darn well, so we'll evaluate that as we go, and we'll also look at how well she addresses the performance indicators and the criteria for her roleplay that we'll take a look at online next. Before we dive into and dissect the roleplay you're going to see, let's take a look at the event situation. Again, you can look at this on the DECA website with the link down below. The judge is our client, who we're going to meet and discuss our personal spending plan with to help the judge meet their financial goals. The client is a junior in high school, planning on attending college, has a part-time job, works 15 hours a week, pays $10 an hour. $15 a week times $10 an hour, that's $150 per week. Times 4, that's $600 a month. The client earns a small allowance, also extra money babysitting, coming out to about $700 a month. Keep that in mind because that is our operating total revenue. There are only two expenses the client has to pay for every month, $50 in gas and $80 to the family's automobile insurance. That comes out to $130. $130, here's your fixed expense. That's going to leave us with $570 to consider meeting the other savings plans and goals that are going to be expressed here in the role play. The client wants to begin saving money for college and future expenses, but also wants to spend on entertainment, clothing, dining out with friends. We'll see if Simran addresses all of these in the role play. It's also important for the client to donate money to charity. Again, we'll be meeting with the client in our office as us as the professional and the client as a high school junior to go over spending plans. We'll see if all these components are explained in the role play. So now on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see the general roadmap of how this student will get through this roleplay and in a general amount of time. And on the bottom, you can see the performance indicators that she should hit in this roleplay. So I'm going to take my face off the screen and we're going to watch this student go through it, and I will pause at different points and make some comments about the work that she is doing as she presents.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come and meet with me. As a financial counselor here at this company, one of my biggest goals is making sure that people can make their dreams come true and that money is not the limiting factor. And so essentially here, I understand that you are a junior in high school and that you're planning on attending college. And I just wanted to begin by commending you for coming in and already taking this responsibility, because a lot of people your age don't really realize that college comes with so many expenses. So the fact that you're already here just shows that you're truly committed to achieving this goal.
We'll stop right there. We're about 30 seconds in. What the student has done right now is establish a great rapport with the judge, establish her role and the judge's role, and really sets up a relationship where you're going to carry out for the next 9 minutes or so, talking to the judge about the situation. If you fail to do this and do it with eye contact and with a very positive body language, you're really going to lose the judge. The first 30 seconds are so crucial.
And so I also understand that you have a part-time job and you're receiving small allowances, and I'll go into how that will break into a personal spending plan later. And so I actually did come from a middle-class family, and so I learned early on how to track my expenses and make sure that I come up with a personal spending plan so that all my goals are met. And I want to do the same thing here with you today. And so the first thing that I will do is discuss the components of a personal spending plan. I will compare the advantages and disadvantages of saving for financial goals, and I will also assess how spending priorities reflect our goals and values.
All right, the next thing that gets done in a role play is you need to lay out the plan for the role play. And if you've listened right there to what the student has done, she's laid out exactly what she wants to go through in the role play, and she identifies those performance indicators so the judge hears them for the first time. So at least now the judge has heard that the student knows what the student's supposed to be presenting about. That's stellar. You have to do that early in your role play.
And so just to begin with, to give you an idea of the terms that I'll be using, income is how much you are earning. And so this could be in the form of wages. When you grow older, you may start receiving salaries, and you could also get dividends from investments such as stocks and mutual funds.
So I'm going to pause again real quick because we're about ready to get into the first performance indicator, but the student never really says it word for word. So we're kind of left hanging from the judge's perspective is this what we're getting into or not?
Here based on the document that I registered from your client plan, I noticed that you are receiving $10 an hour and making $150 from your part-time job, and then you're also getting babysitting and allowance money. And so in total, you're making $700 a month. And I want to say congratulations for making such a hefty amount at such a young age as well. And then expenses are the amount of money that you're spending. And so these could come in both fixed and variable expenses. And so fixed expenses stay the same. And a lot of these expenses you may not be paying now because your parents are covering them for you. And so this would be like rent or premiums for your insurances besides the automobile insurance premiums you're already paying. And then we also have variable expenses. And so in your personal spending plan, you would actually set aside a certain amount of money that you want to roughly spend each month. And so this is just a ballpark target because obviously you won't be spending the same amount of money on clothing and food every month. And so what is left of your income after you spend it on expenses is called our discretionary income. And so this is what we use to figure out what we want to do with it. And so this would go into both saving and it could also go into entertainment. And so with your suggested college goal, I do believe that you should set aside $570 as savings and then use $100 for other saving stuff that you want to look into. Because you are making $700 a month, you're spending $130 of it, so you're left with $570. And so you want to figure out exactly how you're going to break that up into.
So my student, the day after we recorded this, said, Dr. Stahl, we need to fix that because I made a mistake. Can we edit it out? And I said, no one will probably ever notice. She knew immediately that she made a mistake in the role play. And if you go back and look, you can actually see her kind of fumble over the numbers and she realizes that she made a mistake. But the mistake was she subtracted numbers wrong and said that there's $100 left in a budget where there wasn't $100 left. If you know you made the mistake and you just keep moving, the judge might not actually catch it. If you've watched this role play, you might not have caught it either. But she stumbled and she quickly recovered. She didn't get too upset about it and she kept moving. But she made a small mistake, and if you cover it well, no one notices.
And so if you put it aside for college savings, then you'll have a hefty amount of money that you're saving every month. Additionally, this is what we call a pay yourself first strategy. So you're paying yourself first by setting aside money to save. And I also actually did have a client who came in with no personal spending plan, and she had absolutely no idea how much income that she was actually bringing in and how many expenses she was actually spending. And she was actually spending more than she was actually bringing in, and she had no idea about that until I sat down and made a personal spending plan with her. This is not your situation, but by figuring out exactly what expenses you're looking at, you'll be able to make sure that something like that doesn't happen in the future and you do have enough money for college.
Oh, yes, this is perfect. One of the things you get judged on in your role plays is creativity. And some of you are not sure how to do that well. Like you think, oh, I have to draw this creative thing and hand it to the judge. This student, this is the first time she does it, but she'll do it a couple of different times, pulls in past clients to talk about not only her content knowledge and personal financial literacy, but to make the role play more rich and more interesting. So she talks about these past clients, which clearly weren't mentioned in the role play, but in her experience as a financial advisor, of course she would have had them. So it's a really creative element for demonstrating creativity, but also showing off and showcasing more than what she knows than what the role play expects. That's fantastic.
And spending plans could go into spreadsheets, calendars, and also with digitalized technology, we can also look at mobile apps as well for personal spending plans. So in terms of advantages and disadvantages for saving for financial goals.
Did you hear that? Let's go back and listen. The student starts this next portion of her role play by using a paraphrased version of the exact performance indicator that she's going to be assessed on. That's so important because the judge is listening for those things and probably making some notes or scoring as we go. So when the judge hears that you're going to talk about the performance indicator piece, the judge knows to start listening to score that section. That's really savvy to do, and don't be embarrassed to say paraphrase or exact wording of that performance indicator so the judge knows what to listen for.
the most common disadvantage, the most obvious one, is the fact that you're not actively spending that money. And so for that reason, you're not getting short-term happiness. So at that moment, your friends might be splurging on items, but you yourself cannot because you're setting aside that money for other stuff. Additionally, that money is not really gaining value because you're not putting it in investment accounts. But the advantages do outweigh the disadvantages because you now, later in life, have more freedom to accomplish your goals. You also, if something does happen, you have that ability to fall back on money that you have set aside. And you may not know this, but there are high yield savings accounts and other accounts where you can put in your money and generate a little bit of interest, so it's not losing value, it's actually gaining value. And in terms of how our spending priorities reflect our goals and values,
so what we talked about before with that second performance indicator, the student does really well with a third performance indicator. Talking about the paraphrased version of that performance indicator and working it into the role play seamlessly so the judge knows what to listen for. Well done.
Because you want to prioritize college and that's your number one goal, too much spending would make sure that you might not even be able to consider college as an option, and that might hinder your job opportunities. And with college comes a lot of different expenses. So for example, transportation, the yearly tuition, food, boarding, also the books that you might have to pay. And these are a lot of expenses and your parents cannot possibly pay it all. You also have to contribute. So my first step that I would suggest is that you sit down and talk to your parents and figure out exactly how much they want to contribute and how much you will contribute. You might want to look into trying to figure out different ways to get more money, or also looking at different colleges just to figure out exactly what median income that you're looking at. Also researching different loans or different scholarships if you're looking at government loans or private loans, just to figure out exactly how you're going to pay for your college and trying to reduce that college tuition as much as possible. In terms of you wanting to also spend money for entertainment, clothing, and dining out with friends, I do encourage that because you're at a stage in life where you're probably spending a lot of your time studying and trying to get into the college of your choosing. So you need to have money to be able to do fun stuff with your friends. But we also have to realize that there are a lot of cheaper alternatives to do stuff with your friends. So for example, if you want to go to watch a movie at a theater, you could also just as easily watch a movie at your house. If you want to dine out and spend like $70 on a meal, that could quite easily be countered if you just sit down and maybe have a picnic outside, which is not as much money as you would spending at a restaurant. So just sitting down and looking at if you really need to spend your money on certain things, or if you really, if you can in a way, try to find a cheaper alternative for them, you will find that you're actually decreasing your expenses, you're setting aside money from college, and everyone is happy in the situation. And as you grow older, your plan will change. The personal spending plan that you create now will not stay the same when you are starting a family, or when you might start to look to buy your own house. Or even I have clients now who come in who are looking for retirement, and they're trying to figure out what approaches that they could do to maximize the amount of money that they'll have after they retire and they no longer have a steady income. And so I hope that what I talked about today really helped you and helped you figure out exactly how you want to go about things.
Many students, when they get to the end of their role play, forget that they're supposed to wrap it up. They're actually having a real conversation. This student does a great job recapping what we talked about and concluding the role play conversation, sort of like the way you conclude any real conversation, by coming to a natural end. Listen to what she does.
Just as a refresher, I discussed the components of a personal spending plan. I compared the advantages and disadvantages of saving for financial goals, and I also assessed how our priorities reflect our goals and values. If you do have any more questions, here's my business card. I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Business cards are a very common way to end a role play. And I know that this student kind of struggles a little bit with how to leave something behind for the judge. So the business card was one thing. You see her fumble here for a little bit that she wants to do the other one, but she waited. You'll see why in a minute after we get past the judge's questions, because she knows the judge will ask questions, and she wanted one more thing to hand the judge, which is a cool way to deliver information here at the very end.
And also, I do have a I'm more than happy to answer your questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Now, I do have one question. What values am I projecting to my family and my peers by developing a personal spending plan?
So, in today's society, we have to realize that not everyone has the expenses to be able to successfully live life. And a lot of people are not making a lot of income. And so by doing this, you're showing to both your family and friends that you have the responsibility to set aside your money, to figure out exactly what decisions you want to make sure that you're maximizing the amount of income that you're bringing in. And you're showing your friends who we also might want to go to college, or your parents who are trying to figure out if you're actually serious about the money that they're spending to allow you to go to college. Because as you transition from this high school stage to college, you'll realize that in college you're going to be financially independent. And if they put a lot of money into you now, and they for example, pay 3/4 of your college expenses, they may not, by doing this personal spending plan now, they trust that when you actually go to college, that you'll be able to account for your food, that you'll be able to account for your transportation, and maybe for boarding as well. So they just know that you are actually taking your education and finances seriously. In terms of your friends, they too will also maybe be inspired to follow along with your decisions. And so as I talked about earlier, with friends, the cheaper alternatives, it wouldn't just help you, it would help them to save money.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you. I do have a list of scholarships and loans that I do suggest that you look at in your spare time, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions if you do have any questions about that.
Perfect. Thank you.
2 points to make. The judge will ask usually 1 of 2 questions in the role play, and this one was about a question or about a performance indicator that I don't think the student handled well, and we'll see that in the evaluation piece. But you'll see that the student doesn't handle the question as well as she handled the rest of the role play because it's a bit of a surprise. She gets through it okay, and what she does at the very end, handing the list of scholarships, is so awesome. Well done, Simran. Now, I think this student did a fantastic job on her role play, but as I've explained in my judges video, I encourage judges never to give perfect scores unless they are 100% sure that this is the best role play they've ever seen. And I would say this is certainly top notch, but there are a couple things I'd like to point out. And we've already hit on some of them, but how do I think the student addressed the first performance indicator? Exceeds expectations, maybe not smashingly so like she did with the second one. The second one was great. The third one I felt like she missed a little bit on because she could have talked about the values of contributing to charity, which weren't mentioned at all. But it at least met expectations. Maybe I'm being a little small, a little short there. Could have said exceeds expectations. Effectively uses systems thinking, communicates clearly, shows evidence of creativity, all smashing. Overall impressions to the judge's questions, and again, this is where I'm probably being a little critical too. I think that the student could have done a little bit more concise of a job getting to the answer to the judge's questions. If you add all that up, that comes out to an 86, which is a fantastic score on a role play, especially if you have a judge who's trying not to give highest marks on all the different components. So there you have it, the first ever role play breakdown of a role play that's online, and a fantastic role play as it is. Now again, full caveat, I don't give full scores or top marks to anybody when I do role plays. This role play was so good, but I wanted to point out to you some things that, even though it was that good, could have been done a little bit better, so that you can perfect your role plays, you can become the next Deca Goat, and we can see you on stage at ICDC. Good luck, and I can't wait to see you there.